Hello, and welcome to Workshop Wednesdays. My name is Michelle Washington, and I am the instructional coordinator for the Austin Community College Fashion Incubator. There's nothing that we love more than to talk about our industry, especially apparel manufacturing. And you know what that means? How do we put our clothes together? And that includes knowledge about stitching and stitch details. So, we're going to talk a little bit about the stitches that manufacturers use. Today, most retailers and global manufacturers are communicating stitch seam specifications. And this means that they're using stitch identification numbers. And that comes from a chart called ISO. You may have heard it before, but we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about it. This also includes stitches per inch, which is SPI, another familiar construction term. And it's often going to include seam drawings, and their global contractors use seam drawings. You probably also have seen technical package, and you have heard of technical packages. It is very important to be as detailed as possible, and ISOs really help to basically form the full picture of how to construct that garment. Now, we have to think about what else ISOs are good for. Well, it's for the analysis of stitch types used in the fabrication of sewn articles of clothing. And it's really important to develop a clear understanding of the terms employed. Everything about the ISO is essential. Now, I know you're wondering, what does ISO even mean? Well, ISO is the International Organization for Standardization. That's a lot to say, especially 2 times fast. But this organization really takes time and effort to consider what is going to be the standard method of manufacturing and construction to your garment and the stitches to use. I think this would be a great time to switch over to that chart so you can see a little bit more about what I'm talking about. Now, for this presentation, we're actually going to look at the charts, which is really the stitch matrix, used and also created by American A&E. So A&E is the foremost manufacturer and distributor of premium quality industrial and consumer sewing thread. And they are just one of very detailed charts that we like to look at when we're going to examine the stitches for construction. You can see here that this is the ISO stitch terminology. There are multiple drawings here to give a detailed look at exactly what you're looking for when we're talking about a chain stitch or a single thread blind stitch, or even more so a zigzag lock stitch. If you examine many technical packages, you will see that the drawings are very detailed, and it is extremely helpful when you can add something such as ISO stitch terminology. So, for example, single thread chain stitch. This is the top view, this is the bottom view, and the ISO number right here. You'll see that all the ISO numbers are lined up in red for easy finding, easy viewing, and you can find this right away as soon as you're looking for what you want to describe the stitch for your garment. Now, many times you may have turned a garment of yours inside out, take a look at how it was sewn together, and that's a great thing to do to get an idea of the kind of stitching that you want for your garment. Other times, maybe you're in the stores or you're eyeballing different garments that look similar to what you may want to sew for your own line. Well, always take time to turn those garments inside out, the same that you probably do with your garments at home, and look at exactly how everything is sewn, even right down to the buttonhole and the bar tack and the button sew and the lock stitch. Now, notice this will also show not just the ISO number, but common application, single thread chain stitch, basting stitches. That's a common application. single thread chain stitch or lock stitch button sew, buttonhole, bar tack, single thread blind stitch hemming, making belt loops, lock stitch. This is commonly used for top stitching, single needle stitching, straight stitching, zigzag lock stitching, intimate apparel, athletic wear, infant wear, exercise wear. So there are a lot of details and drawings connected to what you are looking for in the construction of the seam, the common use, and the ISO number. There are a lot more other photos here to give you a more detailed look. Needle bottom cover stitch. So you've commonly seen this on cover seaming, making belt loops, like on your denim jeans. And it does look like this, but underneath, a great picture of what that stitch looks like on the bottom. Needle bottom cover stitch, attaching elastic. You often wonder, how do they get that very even 3-needle look on top and what it takes to make it look that way on the bottom? Well, here it is, looper thread on bottom. It's called a 407. So attaching the elastic to men's and boys' knit underwear. So this is one of the stitches you've probably seen quite often. And let's go down even further. A 2-thread over edge or a 3-thread over edge. Now this is called a 504 single needle over edge stitching. And let's take a look at mock safety stitch. That's a 512 seam stretch needle wovens. So this is very important to any seam that you're trying to do a mock safety stitch. Maybe you didn't know what that was before, and maybe you didn't know exactly what you would use for that. But this time around, this is a great way to look at exactly what you want to use for that stitch. So, is this chart important for what you may be sewing together or that you want sewn together? Absolutely. Finally, let's look at the 4-thread safety stitch. And there's also a 5-thread safety stitch. Now, what could you possibly use 4-thread safety stitch for? And of course, this is the bottom view. Well, look here, common application, safety stitch, seaming, wovens, and knit. 5-thread. What would that be used for? Well, that is also the same. 2-needle 4-thread cover stitch. So you have a multitude of drawings to show and help you to display in your technical package or to talk over with your manufacturer, or even to identify from your own garments, what kind of stitches are they using? And this ISO is detailed, helpful, and I love the way it also colors each thread so you can see where each needle has the repetitive stitch, where they color it in a blue-green, a yellow, and the bottom view has traces of red or green. Everything is detailed and absolutely important when you're trying to sew together or have a factory sew together your first sample, especially when you're using technical packages. Now, if any of this information was helpful to you, then stay tuned for more upcoming Workshop Wednesdays, where we'll dive deeper into stitch types as well as specifications. A lot of this information is what you'll find helpful, not only for your own personal sewing, but maybe for your very first sample or to improve upon your design line for more samples or your first run. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us at fashion.incubator@austincc.edu. Also, don't forget, watch our social media and our website. We always have great events and details to come. Thank you for tuning in for Workshop Wednesdays. Once again, my name is Michelle Washington, Fashion Incubator Instructional Coordinator, and we'll see you next time.